From Howard getting killed because of Jimmy and Kim, to Nacho, who died to protect his father. In this video, we will be counting down every single person who did not deserve to die in Better Call Saul, starting with Werner Ziegler. Werner Ziegler was an architect hired by Gus Fring to build his underground super lab that we see in Breaking Bad. Ziegler was just an honest engineer who took on a job without knowing what he would be getting himself into, thinking it would be months of hard work and good money, followed by a quiet life back home in Germany with his wife, who is really hot, by the way. But anyway, as the project dragged far past the original timeline and the crew remained sealed away from the outside world, the long days, the isolation, and the constant pressure started to wear Werner Ziegler down. Mike reluctantly took the crew out to a local strip club for a break, but later took Werner to a quieter bar. But after drinking too much, Werner, in his loneliness, got a little reckless. When Mike left to go deal with Kai, remember him, who was picking fights with the dancers, Werner started socializing with two people in the bar and using the back of a beer mat carelessly mentioned the details about the secret construction beneath the laundry.
The final structure has strict requirements.
Load-bearing walls then.
Very good! Now you use your thinking head, not your drinking head. But how do you get walls in place? They would be 7-8 meters to the side.
When Mike returned, he found Werner and quickly rushed him out of the bar.
Time to go. Huh?
Mike, come sit with us.
Your wife's calling?
My wife?
The pressure only escalated from there. When the crew needed to set off a large blast and a circuit connecting the detonator failed, Werner volunteered to go back down into the shaft. But once alone, the darkness and claustrophobia hit him, triggering a full-blown panic attack until he finally managed to pull himself together. Even after the successful blast, Werner was withdrawn and confessed to Mike that the excavation is taking longer than expected and that he's homesick for his wife. Mike, being a human, finally caved in and agreed to let him talk to his wife over the phone, but after the call, Werner was looking intensely at the security cameras around the warehouse. The following day, Mike returned to the warehouse and discovered Werner was missing. He had blinded the cameras with a laser pointer and climbed to the roof while leaving a letter behind. He escaped, wanting to go see his wife for just a few days, thinking he'd come back, get chewed out by Mike, and everything would go back to normal. Werner had arranged for Marguerite to meet him at a small desert motel where he planned to spend the weekend with her before returning to work. Mike, though, eventually managed to track him down after talking his way to Fred, the Travel Wire employee. More on that poor guy later, but not before Werner received a call from Lalo Salamanca, after Lalo hijacked the same place following Mike and pretended to be a part of Gus's crew, asking Werner for details about the project.
Is this Werner?
Yes. Who is this?
I'm calling on behalf of Gustavo Fring.
Werner gave Lalo just enough information to raise alarms, and with the escape already making him a liability, Gus decided there was no scenario where Werner could walk away. Mike drove him out into the New Mexico desert and made it clear that there was no coming back from what had happened. But first, he allowed Werner to make one final call to Marguerite and send her back home to keep her safe. During the call, Werner broke down.
Ich habe ganz schlechte Nachrichten. Es gibt ein Problem auf der Baustelle. Ja, die haben mich zurückgerufen, weißt du? Was? Nein.
He begged her to leave, but when she wouldn't listen, he started shouting at his wife, anything to stop her from coming.
Ich bin nicht im Hotel und ich bin überhaupt gar nicht in New Mexico. Deshalb musst du zurück nach Hause mit dem nächsten Flug. Margarete, hör mir zu. Jetzt halt die Klappe! Du musst zurück nach Hause.
Werner accepted his fate and asked about the endless desert sky.
There are so many stars visible in New Mexico. I will walk out there to get a better look.
As Werner walked a short distance to get a better look, Mike, with a heavy heart, executed him with a single shot to the back of the head. What if? If Werner hadn't slipped during this call with Lalo, things might not have changed as much as we think. Lalo was already looking into Gus, and sooner or later, he would have uncovered something on his own. But at least Mike wouldn't have been forced into the worst moment of his life. He wouldn't have had to stand in the desert with a man who just wanted a few days with his wife. Howard Hamlin. Howard Hamlin was the managing partner of Hamlin, and McGill, and one of the most competent and professional lawyers in the series. He was also the one who absorbed the fallout when Chuck's mental decline worsened. Instead of exposing the real problem, Howard protected Chuck's image for years, and when Chuck became unstable and threatened to sue HHM, Howard showed his commitment by paying Chuck $3 million from his own pocket to buy him out.
$3 million.
The first of 3 payments, as per the partnership agreement.
The firm can't afford this. You're not shutting down, are you?
I would never endanger the firm. This is mostly from my personal funds and a few loans.
You're paying me out of your own pocket.
Ensuring the firm's survival. But Howard's downfall began way earlier when Jimmy passed the bar and tried to join HHM. Howard was the one who believed the rejection, and Jimmy held on to that anger for years. But Howard was only covering for Chuck, who secretly refused to let Jimmy anywhere near the firm because of his past. And when Jimmy aired the unauthorized Sandpiper commercial, Howard punished Kim for being connected to him and sent her to doc review. Kim eventually fought her way back and landed Mesa Verde on her own, only for Howard to assign the case to someone else.
You've got enough on your plate in doc review.
But Howard wasn't the villain Jimmy and Kim thought him to be. Almost a year after Chuck's death, he apologized to Jimmy, admitted HHM had mistreated him, and even offered him a real position at the firm.
I'd like you to come work at HHM.
But Jimmy, poor little traumatized Jimmy, took this as a petty thing, and instead of turning the offer down honestly, he decided to start messing with Howard. And it began with the bowling ball sequence to smash Howard's cars into his driveway. To public humiliation when Saul Goodman now hired 2 prostitutes to disrupt Howard's lunch with Clifford Maine.
I don't know them. Ladies, I don't know you. This is some sort of mistake, so...
Yeah, we made a mistake, all right. Joe Dog ain't happy. You owe us.
Owe you?
Yeah.
But before the real scheme even began, Kim and Jimmy were sitting over dinner tossing around ideas for how to mess with Howard.
Suppose, I'm just brainstorming here, but suppose we slip him a Mickey, and then while he's out, we get out the old electric clippers, shave him bald.
Kim joked about how if Howard ever did something really bad, the Sandpiper case would settle instantly. And in that moment, they both brushed it off.
Forget it, okay?
But what started as a silly conversation slowly turned into a real plan. They realized that if they could make Howard look unstable, the settlement would be forced through and they'd walk away with their Sandpiper payday.
The Howard thing. What were you thinking?
The step was Jimmy planting a small bag of fake cocaine inside Howard's locker at the Santa Fe Country Club. As they had planned, Cliff Maine, well, he saw everything.
Enough.
Howard?
What? This can't be.
Sure looks like it.
Really?
It was just enough to plant the seed in Cliff's mind about Howard's use, and from there, they convinced the Kettlemans that Howard lost them their case because he was under the influence.
Cocaine.
Common knowledge out in the yard.
Yeah, those drug people can spot each other a mile away.
They just know.
Yeah.
But if that wasn't nearly enough, Jimmy then stole Howard's car when he was at his therapist's, picked up Wendy, and threw her out of the moving car right in front of Clifford Maine to make Howard look unstable.
Jesus.
You son of a bitch! You twisted, deadly piece of shit!
Wasn't that Howard?
With Cliff already suspicious, Jimmy and Kim moved to the final event. They hired a lookalike to pose as Judge Rand Casimiro and staged a fake bribe. Their plan almost failed when the real judge pulled up with an arm case in front of Jimmy, though.
You're not gonna believe this, but I just ran into Casimiro, the real one.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and
Before you ask, he didn't shave his mustache. He broke his arm.
Are you serious?
the guy has a giant cast
On his left arm.
They quickly reshot everything and even went as far as to coat the photos with drugs to make Howard's pupils dilate during mediation.
What's that? Don't worry about it.
Jimmy had already conned Howard into hiring their fake private investigator, who delivered the staged photos directly to him before the meeting. At first, Howard didn't think much of them, but when mediation finally began, and Howard saw Judge Casimiro walk in wearing the exact clothes from the photos, everything clicked, and Howard became convinced something corrupt was happening behind his back. Howard confronted Casimiro about the bribe, and when the pictures were shown, they'd already been swapped, with an innocent shot of Jimmy handing a frisbee to a jogger.
Julie, you got the wrong envelope.
That was the only one on your desk.
Look again.
Mr. Hamlin, are you all right? Your eyes.
I am fine.
Howard looked unstable, high, and paranoid, and the Sandpiper settlement was pushed through immediately. And that humiliation led him straight to Jimmy and Kim's apartment that night. Howard walked in with a bottle of Macallan, demanding to know why they destroyed his reputation.
I thought you did it for the money, but now it's so clear. Screw the money. You did it for fun. You get off on it.
And in the middle of that rant, as the candle flickered, a shadow appeared behind Howard. Lalo Salamanca stepped into the apartment, but Howard didn't recognize the danger at all.
Howard, you need to leave.
Who are you? Me? Nobody. I just need to talk to my lawyers.
Oh, is that right? You want some advice? Find better lawyers.
Jimmy and Kim were shaken to their core as Howard was piecing together what was about to happen.
I think I'm in the middle of something.
Lalo calmly pulled out a gun and screwed on a suppressor, but before Howard could even react, Lalo shot him in the head. And Jimmy and Kim were left screaming as Howard's body dropped to the ground. What if? If Howard had survived, it might have allowed Howard to maintain stability at HHM, preventing the firm from downsizing, fixing his marriage, and perhaps even making Jimmy and Kim stay together. Chuck McGill. Charles Lindbergh Chuck McGill Jr. was probably the most brilliant lawyer on the entire show, and the respected co-founder of HHM. From the very first episode, we see him sitting alone in his dark house, wrapped in a space blanket, hiding from electricity, and we slowly learn how his life was slowly ruined by his psychological illness, electromagnetic hypersensitivity, EHS, something that started likely due to depression after his wife Rebecca left him.
Talk about when these symptoms first started. It was shortly after you were divorced, is that right?
Yes.
Chuck always had a resentment for Jimmy, no matter how hard he tried to win his brother's affection. One of the clearest examples was when Chuck told Jimmy that he should change his last name because James McGill would confuse potential clients.
Howard brought this. How about Vanguard Law?
And moments like that weren't new between them. Chuck always saw Jimmy as the kid who stole from the cash register, the one who had to bail out after the Chicago sunroof stunt, and the brother who kept dragging the McGill name into trouble. Even when their mother was on her deathbed, she called out for Jimmy while Chuck was the only one in the room.
Jimmy. No, Mom, it's me, Chuck.
After she passed away, Jimmy asked if she said anything, and Chuck told him no, because of pure jealousy. To Chuck, it felt like no matter how hard he worked or how much responsibility he carried, Jimmy was the one people always loved. And when Rebecca eventually left him, that old resentment only grew stronger. They briefly united when Jimmy discovered the Sandpiper Crossing lawsuit, and for a moment it looked like things were getting better. He read the files, lit up with excitement, and the two of them worked together like they used to. They argued, built the case from nothing, and pushed Sandpiper into offering millions. But when the case grew too big for two people working out of a living room, they agreed it had to go to HHM. Jimmy walked in thinking this was finally his moment to stand beside his brother as an equal, but Howard shut him out immediately.
Jimmy, I'm just going to say it. You're not working here.
He told Jimmy the partners weren't interested in bringing him on, and Jimmy lost it at Howard over how he could throw away a case worth millions just for his resentment for Jimmy, but he later finds out it was Chuck who told Howard not to hire him. Really makes you think Howard was willing to throw away millions to keep his friendship with Chuck because he respected him this much.
You're not a real lawyer. And you take these shortcuts and you think suddenly you're my peer?
From that moment forward, their relationship was over. Later, Jimmy tampered with the Mesa Verde files by switching addresses numbers from 1261 to 1216. You know, one after the Magna Carta, bribing the copy shop clerk to lie for him and making sure the whole thing looked like a simple mistake.
1261 Rosella Drive. Yes, I have a copy of the notice of intent too, but on the actual filing, the address reads 1216. So, which is it?
When Chuck figured it out, he decided to take his revenge.
He sabotaged me. You and I both know exactly what I'm talking about.
He started acting more unstable, covering his entire living room in space blankets and pretending he was falling apart over his mistake.
Made a mistake.
What mistake?
Feeling guilty and thinking his brother was genuinely breaking down, Jimmy admitted everything.
I changed 1261 to 1216. It all went down exactly like you said. I mean, exactly.
And Chuck secretly recorded every word of it.
Besides, it's your word against mine.
A few days later, my man Ernesto came by to drop off groceries and swap out the batteries in Chuck's tape recorder. Chuck made sure the recorder accidentally switched on just long enough for Ernie to overhear Jimmy's confession. Then, he pressured Ernie into staying quiet, reminding him that anything heard in the house was confidential. But Chuck knew Ernesto cared about Jimmy and predicted that he would warn him. And with that, the trap was set. Chuck hired a private investigator, set up the house as bait, and with Howard hiding inside, he waited for Jimmy to break in at nighttime to steal the tape. But Jimmy, he didn't wait at all. After Ernesto told Kim and Kim told Jimmy, he showed up in broad daylight, kicked down the door and tore through Chuck's desk and ripped the tape apart right in front of him.
You take me, you asshole! Jimmy!
And while Jimmy stood there furious, ripping the tape apart in front of Chuck, Howard stepped in.
Jimmy! Jimmy! That's enough!
Jimmy was arrested and Chuck finally moved to the next part of his plan. He went to DDA Kyra Hay and suggested a pre-prosecution diversion deal. No jail time if Jimmy confessed, but that confession would go straight to the New Mexico Bar Association, almost guaranteeing disbarment. That was Chuck's real goal from the beginning. But when the bar hearing finally came, things didn't go the way Chuck wanted. Before the hearing, Jimmy quietly built his own trap.
You gotta fit him in a tight space?
He contacted Chuck's ex-wife Rebecca and brought her in so Chuck would do everything he could to appear normal. Then he had Huel, lovely Huel, plant a fully charged phone battery in Chuck's pocket without him noticing. With everything set, the hearing began. Jimmy waited until the perfect moment and revealed that Chuck had been carrying that battery in his breast pocket for almost 2 hours, completely unaware of it. When the truth hit him, Chuck cracked.
Take away from the fact that the
I
defendant...
am not crazy! I should have stopped him when I had the chance. And you have to stop him.
That was the moment everyone in that room realized Chuck wasn't mentally stable. After the hearing, Rebecca knocked at Chuck's door, but he refused to open it. When she finally left, Chuck walked down to a payphone, called Dr. Cruz, and set up a meeting. He told Dr. Cruz he was ready to work through the condition, and for the first time in years, he pushed himself. He held a battery in his hand, forced himself to focus, and even went grocery shopping by himself, trying desperately to get his life back on track. When Kim met with Paige to discuss Mesa Verde, she congratulated Kim on winning, but Kim didn't see it that way.
As far as I'm concerned, all we did was tear down a sick man.
And while Chuck was trying to rebuild himself, Jimmy was still going out of his way to tear him down further, without even realizing how much it would affect his brother. Jimmy went over to the malpractice insurance company and spun a sob story about his brother, mentioning Chuck's courtroom meltdown and mental condition.
He's mentally ill. He had a complete mental breakdown at the bar hearing.
After Jimmy's visit to the insurance company, they threatened to double the premiums for every lawyer at HHM. Howard suggested that Chuck retire for the good of the firm.
Chuck, you are the best legal mind I've ever known, hands down. I can't be partners with someone whose judgment I don't trust.
But Chuck, determined to protect his legacy, threatened to sue HHM.
You're suing Hamlin McGill.
Come on in, Howard.
Chuck was prepared to follow through on his threat to take HHM to court, confident that the firm couldn't afford a legal battle and it would be enough for Howard to back down.
If you can't trust my judgment, as you say, so be it. But you're gonna have to pay me for my share. I believe it comes to around $8 million. We both know the firm doesn't have the money.
But Howard shocked him by writing a $3 million check that we mentioned earlier out of his own pocket, with promises of 2 more installments under the partnership agreement.
This is pointless. $3 million. The first of 3 payments, as per the partnership agreement. You're not shutting down, are you?
I would never endanger the firm. This is mostly for my personal funds and a few loans.
Chuck's plan backfired, and he lost the firm and watched Howard protect HHM at his own expense. Chuck tried to hide how much it hurt him, but losing the firm was the same as losing his entire identity. After Kim's car accident, Jimmy tried one last time to speak to Chuck and visited him to repair whatever was left between them. Chuck let Jimmy in, and the house looked normal with lights on and music playing, but it was all a show.
I don't want to hurt your feelings, but the truth is, you've never mattered all that much to me.
That night, Chuck suffered the worst breakdown of his life. He shut off every breaker in the house, but when the meter outside kept running, he panicked. He pulled out bulbs and plugged everything, disconnected the phone, yet nothing changed. Chuck then tore into the walls, ripping out insulation, and when that didn't work, he went outside and smashed the power meter with a baseball bat. By the time he went back in, the place was destroyed and he was completely exhausted. He sat in the middle of the mess with a lantern beside him. After a few minutes, he started kicking the table. At first, it was small taps, then harder ones until the lantern tipped over, hitting the floor, and he just stayed there as the flames spread around him. He was mourned deeply by Rebecca, who cried the hardest at his funeral, and by Howard, who blamed himself for what happened. Jimmy spiraled into depression over Chuck's death, but eventually blamed it on Howard, thinking that Chuck's suicide was driven by being forced out of HHM, even though Jimmy's own actions was what led to everything. What if? If Chuck had gotten real help for his condition, things could have ended differently. If Jimmy had reported to someone to check in on him or not drive him out of his own company due to the insurance fees, Chuck may still be alive, and Jimmy would also be able to reconcile with his brother. Nacho Varga. Nacho had a rough life from the very start. Not having a mother and growing up in a bad neighborhood left him vulnerable to poor choices, and he was drawn to figures like Tuco while trying to escape his father's expectations for the family upholstery business. We first see him working for Tuco Salamanca. As Tuco spiraled into unpredictable violence and began using yummy meth, Nacho grew increasingly concerned for his safety and asked Mike for help.
Pull up in the spot next to Tuco's. Pop, headshot, roll out.
Mike does help Nacho, but not by killing Tuco. He took a safer approach and had Tuco arrested for assault and having a gun. But things get even worse when Hector Salamanca steps in and brings even bigger problems. After Hector threatened Mike's daughter-in-law Kaylee, who never ages, Mike hit back by attacking one of Hector's trucks and stealing the cash. That only made things worse because Hector, now looking for a new smuggling route, turned his attention to Nacho's father's business. Nacho, he loved his father, and his dad was an honest man who wasn't in the game, who wanted nothing to do with the cartel. Nacho couldn't let Hector drag him into this world, so he felt like he only had one option left. He swapped Hector's heart medication with sugar pills, hoping to trigger a fatal stroke without anyone suspecting him. Unfortunately, that's where Nacho's downfall started when Gus Fring figured out what he did. But instead of just killing him, he blackmailed him into becoming a double agent, forcing him to spy on the Salamancas while threatening his father's life.
I know what you've done.
Nacho walked a dangerous line feeding information to Gus while keeping us the appearance of loyalty to Hector and later Lalo. To tighten his control over Nacho, Gus even had his men abduct him and stage a fake execution in front of a restaurant where his father was eating. He wanted Nacho close to Lalo, and he expected him to report everything Lalo was doing from the inside.
Lalo Salamanca. I need to know where he is going, what he is thinking, what he is planning. I need to know what he's going to do before he does it.
As the stakes grew higher with Lalo, Nacho was stuck playing both sides to protect his father. When Crazy 8 got arrested, Lalo forced him to become a snitch and feed the DEA information about Gus's dead drops. Nacho told Gus what was happening, but he also convinced him not to shut anything down.
If there's no money in those dead drops, Lalo will know someone talked.
When Lalo was later arrested, he called Nacho from jail and ordered him to burn down one of Gus's restaurants. To maintain the illusion, Nacho helped Gus stage the attack by vandalizing and blowing up an empty restaurant, making it look like Nacho was following Lalo's orders. And for Nacho's loyalty, after Lalo was bailed out, he took Nacho to Mexico and introduced him to Don Eladio, presenting him as the man who had been keeping the Salamanca business running ever since Hector got sick, and the person Lalo trusted to handle things on the U.S. side.
Quisiera presentarle a Ignacio Varga. Es nuestro nuevo hombre en el norte. Pero es en Salamanca, ¿no? Él se encargó de las cosas desde que Héctor se enfermó. Es amigo de Tuco.
But wait, there's more, because things were going to get worse for Nacho as Gus had ordered him to help set up an ambush on Lalo's compound. And Nacho had to unlock the gate and let the assassins inside. That night, Lalo was drinking outside and invited Nacho to join him. When Lalo sent Nacho to get better alcohol, Nacho used the opportunity to set a pan of oil on the stove, creating smoke that drew Lalo into the kitchen. While Lalo was distracted, Nacho unlocked the back gate and let the hitmen inside. However, Lalo survived the attack because he's awesome and killed all of the agents, and when he noticed Nacho's untouched drink, he realized Nacho had been involved with Gus. Later, when the cousins showed up at the motel, Nacho narrowly escaped and hid in an oil tank until nightfall. Once he was safe, he called his father just to hear his voice and to reassure himself that his dad was still okay.
A2C final posting.
Dad, it's me.
Immediately after, Nacho contacted Mike and agreed to follow Gus's orders, who ordered him to give a false confession claiming a rival cartel had paid him to betray Lalo. The next morning, Nacho's fate was sealed. He was captured, beaten, and taken to the desert, where Hector, Bolsa, Gus, and the cousins were waiting.
Tell me what I need to know. I'll see that your death is a good one.
Nacho initially went with what they had planned.
It was Alvarez. Los Ojos out of Peru. They paid me to set up your nephew.
But he refused to play along completely.
Alvarez has been paying me for years. I opened Lalo's gate, and I would do it again, and I'm glad what they did to him. I put you in that chair. You were dead and buried, and I had to watch this asshole bring you back.
Then Nacho freed himself, took Bolsa hostage, and for a moment seemed ready to fight back. But instead, he turned the gun on himself and chose the terms of his own death. It was pretty clear that there was no way Nacho could have survived this, but at least his final choice allowed him to die with dignity. What if? If Nacho had run instead of following Gus's orders, his father and anyone close to him likely would have been killed, and Nacho would have spent the rest of his life on the run, constantly looking over his shoulder. His death, as tragic as it was, ensured his father's safety and spared him a life trapped by fear and relentless pursuit. Fred Whalen. Fred Whalen was a travel wire employee, just doing his job, helping people send money. But when Werner Ziegler escaped from Gus's warehouse, as mentioned earlier, and arranged transport through travel wire, Mike tracked him there and spun a sympathetic cover story claiming Werner was his brother-in-law with dementia and diabetes.
He is my brother-in-law, and we're very worried about him. He has early-stage dementia, and on top of that, he's a diabetic.
Fred, believing the story, cooperated fully, giving Mike details about Werner's phone calls, his car service, and even letting him check security footage.
He was here, but you missed him. He left about an hour ago.
But things went incredibly wrong when Lalo Salamanca arrived shortly after, and Fred immediately sensed something was off.
So I was wondering if there's maybe something that, my friend missed.
Maybe you should just call your friend.
I did. And, he told me to come back and take another look.
I can't. I'm sorry. You better just call the police.
That's when Fred suddenly got a phone call, and Lalo vanished. When the call ended, Fred noticed a loose ceiling panel, and before he could react, Lalo dropped down from the ceiling right into his booth with a handgun pointed at his face. Instead of shooting Fred, Lalo beat him to death off screen. We never see the killing, but the autopsy report shows the extent of the violence, with blunt force trauma and a fractured skull. Lalo then sent Fred's body and the store on fire to cover the crime, erasing any evidence of the horrific encounter. After the murder, though, a witness testifies seeing Lalo, and Mike takes it a step further by witness tampering and provided Lalo's car license details.
Is this the car?
That's not for me to say.
Giving the police enough to arrest him. But at the bail hearing, Fred's parents and brother sat in the courtroom and watched the man who killed him get released anyway, as Saul throws away the whole case due to witness tampering using the files given by Mike.
Who's that?
It's gotta be his family.
They were left to face the painful truth that their son's life mattered less to the system than the man who took it. What if? If Fred had lived, he might have just stretched it up to another day at work, and Jimmy wouldn't have needed to get his hands dirty. A key moment that slowly turned him into the Saul Goodman that we knew. Sylvia Ramos and her husband Matteo. Sylvia and Mateo Ramos were kind, quiet neighbors who lived near Lalo Salamanca's compound. They were close to the point where Lalo even paid for Mateo's dental work. I know it seems like a kind gesture, but wait till you hear the rest. After surviving the failed hit at his compound, Lalo showed up at their doorstep, and when Sylvia saw him bloodied and limping, she immediately let him in. She made him coffee, offered him food, and sat him down at the table. That's when Mateo walked in.
Cabrón, yo nomás el hombre de la montaña.
Sylvia told Mateo to go shave, and Lalo casually told him to keep the mustache and soul patch.
Oye, Mateo. Déjate el bigote, se te ve bien.
It almost felt harmless at the moment, but with Lalo, even the smallest conversation had a purpose. When Sylvia stepped away to make more coffee, Lalo quietly picked up a pair of scissors, and by the time she returned, he had already butchered Mateo, before turning on Sylvia just as ruthlessly. He then burned Mateo's body beyond recognition and planted it at his own compound, disappearing into the night with a perfect cover story in place. When the cousins arrived, they saw the charred remains and instantly assumed it was Lalo. But this wasn't a last-minute escape plan. It was something Lalo had been preparing for years. The dental work he paid for was to make sure Mateo's teeth matched his own, so when the body was found, no one would question it. What if? If Sylvia hadn't opened that door, they would have never realized Lalo was using them as a part of a long-term escape plan, and the poor couple may have survived. Casper. Casper was a member of Werner Ziegler's team. Casper's involvement with the super lab construction ended abruptly after Werner's death. Mike paid Casper and the crew in full while fabricating a lie about Werner being sent home, but Casper didn't buy a word of it. He could tell something darker had happened, and he made that clear when he told Mike.
It was worth 50 of you.
Casper took his payment and eventually returned to his cabin in Germany, believing he was finally safe. But Lalo Salamanca was following every clue Werner left behind after questioning Marguerite Ziegler and sneaking into her house to gather information. He was able to track Casper deep into the forests of Germany.
Guten Tag. Guten Tag. Das ist Privatgelände. Wen suchen Sie? Haben Sie sich verlaufen?
Sorry, I don't speak any German. Are you lost?
Casper grabbed his axe and ran for cover inside the barn, hoping he could use the shadows and tight space to survive. Also, Lalo stepped inside, searching for him. Casper managed to catch him off guard, striking Lalo with the blunt end of his axe. For a moment, it felt like he might overpower Lalo, but when Casper got close to him, he slashed his face with a razor blade and used the axe to chop off his left foot. He then forced Casper to tie off the bleeding stump and reveal what he knew about Gus's operation and the construction of the super lab beneath the laundry.
Tie that off before you bleed to death.
We don't see Casper dying on screen, but there was just no way for Casper since Lalo wouldn't have let him live, and even if he did, Casper would have died from blood loss in his remote cabin. Matt Ehrmantraut. Out of nearly everyone in the series, Matt Ehrmantraut's death stands out as one of the most undeserving. Except Howard, maybe. As Mike's son, he was smart, disciplined, and determined to be a good cop. Unlike nearly everyone else around him in the precinct, he refused to take shortcuts or bribes, and he genuinely wanted to uphold the law. But when Hoffman ordered Matt a cut of dirty money, he refused at first and called his father for help. Matt told Mike he wanted to go to internal affairs and expose the corruption in the precinct, hoping to shut everything down. But Mike warned him.
I told him, you know what a cop fears most? More than getting shot, more than anything. Prison. Getting locked up with everybody you put away. You threaten a cop with that, you make him dangerous.
During that call, Mike admitted to being dirty himself and warned Matt that refusing the offer could make the precinct distrust him and possibly get him killed.
I told him I did it too. That I was like Hoffman, getting by. And that's what you heard that night. Me talking him down, him kicking and screaming until the fight went out of him. He put me up on a pedestal.
Matt reluctantly trusted his father and went along with his advice, but his moment of hesitation, combined with the perception that he might expose the corruption, marked him as a threat. Hoffman and Finsky lured him to a crack house under the pretense of a fake call, then killed him there, and staged the scene to make it look like a crackhead with a gun had shot him, covering up their involvement entirely.
I got Matty to take the money, and they killed him 2 days later.
Even though Mike eventually tracked down and killed both Hoffman and Fensky before leaving Philadelphia, it didn't change the fact that Matt was gone. What if? If Matt had survived, he could have been a force of real change within the corrupt precinct, exposing wrongdoing and bringing accountability where it was desperately needed. And he would still be alive to take care of his family and daughter Kaylee. Well, folks, that's the end of the video. Comment down below and tell us which death you think was the most undeserving, and we will see you next time. And also, one more thing, this isn't AI, you goobers, but thanks for watching the video. Have a good one. Bye-bye!